Hello, welcome to Masters and Volts, the Business of Politics, a weekly podcast in which we bring you guests who work in the business of campaigns and public policy advocacy. I'm here with my co-host Bill Volz to interview ADRIAN HEMOND, the CEO of Grassroots Midwest. ADRIAN is a strategic consultant who works in the intersecting space of politics and communications. Masters and Volts, the Business of Politics, cuts across the ideological divide to bring you information about the inner workings of winning campaigns and influencing public policy. Bill, say hello to ADRIAN and introduce yourself to the audience.
Bill Volz, a professor at Wayne State's Mike Ilitch School of Business. Great to have you with us, ADRIAN.
Thanks a lot for having me.
ADRIAN HEMOND is a CEO of Grassroots Midwest. He founded the firm in 2013 after acquiring a broad range of experience and expertise in politics. He's a former political science instructor at Saginaw Valley State University. He was chief of staff to the Michigan House Minority Leader and served as a lobbyist with Governmental Consultant Services, specializing in appropriations, local government regulatory affairs, and procurement. ADRIAN has also been the lead staff to the Michigan House Appropriations Committee under its then chairman, Representative George Cushenberry from Detroit, as well as on the staff of State Representative Marcia Cheeks from Detroit as well. He is also a former account executive with Energy Systems Group, an energy performance contractor. He holds a BA and an MA from Michigan State University in political science. Welcome. Thank you for coming today. We appreciate it very much. And we'll get started. We'd like for you to tell us a little bit about your journey, which led to you in this position as CEO of Grassroots Midwest, a company which you founded. And we're really interested in you talking about not only your journey there, but what your firm does, the nature of its services that it provides, and what you do in that space of activity.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been doing politics in some form or fashion for as long as I can remember. I wrote my first political mail piece when I was 8 years old in my mother's front room in Oakland, California. Mostly they had me do it to humor me because I was interested when I was a little boy. And I've been involved in politics in some form or fashion ever since. I joke sometimes that I've been trying to escape politics basically since I was 8 years old, but I turned out not to be good at much else besides politics. So I've been stuck with it for about 40 years now. So it started with that and a sort of interest in how politics and public influence actually work. Why do political actors and institutions behave the way that they do? And so I dabbled in politics here and there basically ever since, wrote mail when I was in high school, volunteered on campaigns. It became pretty obvious that I was going to study political science in school just because I had been interested in it, I'd been involved in it, and I had some concept of potentially where I could take it. And so I went to Michigan State University right out of high school and got a BA in political science. And then I went to work outside of the academy in politics for a couple of years, got married, and wound up right back in grad school for political science because it turns out that I didn't really enjoy having a straight job. I was ready to get back into politics basically immediately. And I started teaching at Saginaw Valley when I was in graduate school. I was actually in a PhD program at Michigan State, and I dropped out. ABD, for those who don't know, that means all but dissertation. So I'd passed my comprehensive exams and done all my coursework and decided that I didn't want to study politics. I wanted to do it. And so I left grad school and went and got a job in the state legislature as a sort of backdesker for a state representative from Detroit named Marcia Cheeks, and pretty quickly worked my way up through the House. I went from her office to the House Dem Policy office to the House Appropriations Chairman's office in a span of about 3 years. And I stayed in the House Appropriations Chairman's office for 1 year and got hired by the lobby firm that represented the city of Detroit and a bunch of other clients, GCSI. and learned my craft as a political consultant there, not just as a lobbyist, but how to run a political business, which it turns out that I actually enjoyed even more than the sort of day-to-day of running campaigns, staffing a legislative committee, really being able to marry up my political expertise with the ability to run a profitable business. And after being at the lobby firm for a while, selling performance contracts to government, when I left the lobby firm, I ended up starting this firm in 2013 as the state's first bipartisan political outreach firm. So it's pretty common in Michigan for lobby firms to be bipartisan, the folks that go in and actually talk to lawmakers to get them to vote a certain way or amend bills a certain way. But there had never been a bipartisan advocacy firm in Michigan. It was always you do campaign and issue work for Republicans or you do it for Democrats. And I was really drawn to the idea of the bipartisan model, the same model that we had at the lobby firm where I worked. And it turns out that both sides of the two major American political parties have very little understanding of how the other side does what they do. And just as their voters seem to understand each other less and less over time. And we thought that was a real value proposition for us, whether you're a corporation or you're a labor union or you're a trade association or you're a super PAC. If you want to win on your issue, you need to be able to communicate with all different sorts of people. And you need to be able to understand the tactics that the political parties and political candidates are going to use in the environment so that you can be most effective. And that was the theory of Grassroots Midwest when I started it, was we would have Republicans and Democrats working together to help our clients achieve their goals in politics. We joke that it's everything up to the Capitol doors. The lobbyists take over from there. No one at our firm's registered to lobby. We help people figure out what can put you in a position where a lobbyist could actually get you what you want. What can influence the media environment so that people consider your issue in a way that's beneficial to you? And how do you get individual residents of Michigan, Indiana, Wisconsin, any of the upper Midwestern states to take discrete actions that benefit your cause, right? Once you've convinced somebody that you, your client, are right about something, how do you get them to take on bite-sized chunks of the work? A really great example of that from just this week is an issue that our firm is working on that I love because it absolutely confounds partisanship, which is the tip credit. For your listeners who don't know, the tip credit is essentially workers who work in tipped positions like wait staff and bartenders. Their employer pays them less than the minimum wage because they more than make up for it in tips from their patrons. Right. And so there has been an effort to get rid of the tip credit in Michigan. And it turns out that the labor force that works under the tip credit doesn't like that they like working for tips as opposed to just working for an hourly wage because they feel that they make more money that way. And so this week, we got 750 servers and bartenders from all over Michigan to come do that First Amendment thing, to petition their government for redress of grievances. And so we had them out on the Capitol lawn. We got them advocating for themselves. We even got a couple of them comfortable with speaking in front of the media. And then we walked them up on the Capitol steps to show lawmakers, this is what the people who work in this industry actually think. And so that's a good example of the type of stuff that our firm does, is we go out and find the people who should care about an issue, communicate with them in a way that makes sense for them and the way they live, people who don't watch politics every day, and then show them how they can take bite-sized actions that are going to affect change in a way that works for them.
That's really interesting. I read about that in the newspaper, that they had a grassroots rally, and I thought that was really fascinating. And I was wondering how that group of people who you wouldn't think get together on a regular basis to do that kind of thing were brought together, but now I know. And that seems so consonant with what you do as the title, Grassroots Midwest, getting people together. And so is it fair to say that in that kind of public policy advocacy work, if you do, it's really communications, that you get everything ready for a group like that or others but you don't actually go to Capitol Hill and do the lobbying for them. You get them ready to hire a lobbyist, or if they want to be a grassroots activist organization petitioning, as you said, on the steps of the Capitol, you help organize that, and through your communications things, get them ready to do that. And really, what I'd like for you to talk about is what your firm does. You do, if you go to the website, and I encourage everybody to do that, Grassroots Midwest, you have a broad array of services, and your bipartisanship in this area of politics is hard to find today. Almost everybody is on one side or the other very openly, and that gives you a unique, I think, kind of identity. But tell us a little bit about the services you provide, because they're quite detailed and involve a lot more than just broad sweep stuff. It's really, a lot of it's very nitty-gritty stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. At a baseline level, you mentioned the communication services. That actually encompasses a wide array of things, right? There are traditional paid communication techniques like television advertisements, direct mail, phone calls, things like that. And there's this whole new wide vista of communication techniques that our electronic devices have enabled. Right. And so you look at things like email communication, which is a last generation of online communication. There are the social media platforms now, which are obviously very popular, whether it's Facebook and Instagram, when you're trying to target a little older demographic in the general public, or it's Twitter when you're trying to target journalists to get them to talk about an issue a certain way, leveraging those social media platforms to get your message out. The new frontier is digital geo-targeting and deep data mining about the people that you want to be able to communicate with, so that you have not just the right message writ large, but you have tailored messages that can be delivered to exactly the right people. So to give you a couple of examples of, how that works, every day we all give our personal information away. Right? Each of us is carrying around one of these phones. Maybe we have a tablet. We're all talking to each other on computers. And so we carry these tethers around where we give our information away. I think people to have the assumption that these technology companies just give us all of this stuff for free out of the goodness of their hearts. That's not the case. The thing I always tell people is that if you're receiving something for free, you are the product. And so we give all of our personal information away, and our firm is able to take that information and leverage it. Some of that information is available for purchase on the open market. Some of it appears in publicly available databases. And so we're able to take that information and target people very effectively, both in terms of what they think, what issues they might activate on, what charities they donate to, their voting behavior, what do they watch on the weekends, what sports do they enjoy, or hobbies. And then we marry that up with their electronic leashes, their phones. And so I know where your phone goes to sleep every night, right? Once I followed it there 2-3 nights in a row, I know that's where it goes to sleep. And I can geo-target you and the people who live in your household down to approximately 6 meters, right? So I can get pretty precise with that. I can also target people based on where they go. So it's very common for us to be approached by a potential client, say, hey, this event just happened 2 months ago. I'm really interested in the people who were there. I want to talk to those people. Snap of the fingers, I can draw a polygon on a map around the place where people were gathered, whether it's a convention hall or the state capitol or Chamber of Commerce or the Cherry Festival in Traverse City. And I can serve ads to people who were there months and months ago. And then, of course, as I'm serving ads to those people, I learn where they live. I might not have known who those individuals were before, but because you attended that event, now I can track you back to your house and I can serve ads to you and the other members of your household there. And we continue to find ways to become more sophisticated with doing that. We just hired our first data engineer, data scientist at Grassroots Midwest, who's been leveraging AI tools to increase the speed and the depth at which we can harvest this information, and also the customizations that we can do for people to go out and find specific information for clients that's going to help them figure out who are the people that should be involved in my cause. Who are the people that should be donating money into my cause? Who are the people that should show up for a Capitol Day to speak up on their own behalf for the compensation model that they prefer? And so the more we're able to incorporate those technology tools, the more powerful it makes our communication tools. The AI tools, I think, have completely revolutionized data mining. We've talked about data mining in business for decades, right? And the AI will do that for you, right? And not only will it go find the information that you want and scrape it off the internet and put it into a form that you can then use to target people, but now we can actually use large language models to analyze the data when we get it back, to code it for us based on things like sentiment analysis, right? An individual person going through Facebook post after Facebook post to code the sentiment that people have about a particular issue is prohibitively expensive and costs way too much time. And AI can do that in seconds. And then it can do it iteratively over time. And you can just set it out there to run so that you can track sentiment about an issue or a politician or really anything else that our clients want to know about. We've taken traditional political organizing tools and political logistics and married that up with bleeding edge technology from the tech and business world to help people who want to engage with the political process be more successful doing it. And that's super powerful, especially when you marry it up with the old-fashioned organizing shoe leather.
Let me ask you a question this way. If going back to the example that you gave, the very interesting one, the first one about the people about the tip credit. If I were a labor union and potentially a prospective client of yours, and I asked you to come and talk to me, and I said, we're interested in really getting involved in this issue, whether it's minimum wage or whatever, how would you sell the services of Grassroots Midwest to convince me that you're where I need to go to get the work I want done?
So the way that we pitch ourselves is a little bit different from some other firms, again, because we are bipartisan, right? So a lot of the more partisan firms are able to make a pitch based on affinity, that they're, you know me, I'm one of your tribe, I believe in your issue. That's not what we do here. I joke with people all the time that I just do politics for money, right? And so that allows me, number one, to be honest with you about your issue and how difficult it's going to be. I don't approach your issue with rose-colored glasses. I'm going to give you an unvarnished view of how difficult it's going to be to get what you want, and I'll lay out the steps for you. So that's the first thing that we do with our pitches, is that we're very explicit with people that we're not here pitching you on this because we believe in your issue. We're here pitching you on this because we believe we can help you win on your issue. Your beliefs are your own, your organization's beliefs are your own. That's not what you're paying us for. You're paying us for our track record of effectiveness, and because you believe that we know how to win on your issue, not that we agree with you about your issue. So that's really the foundation of the pitch. And we've got a track record that we can show people, whether it's in electoral politics, where we don't work directly with candidates anymore, but we do a lot of work in elections, and we're still 11 years in, sitting on a win percentage well north of 75% in elections that we engage in. We can show people that track record, right? We can show people a track record of legislative wins, or people we've been able to turn out to a Capitol Day or to media roundtables around the state. And so we're big believers in the old maxim, show, don't tell. Like, I can tell you till I'm blue in the face that you should hire our firm. I'm going to show you why you should. I'm going to show you where we've won before on similar issues or similarly positioned issues in the issue environment. And we find that to be our most effective pitch for people, is to show them how they win.
Thank you very much. That's very useful information. And we're going to follow up on that with Bill. I'll turn things over to you now.
Thanks, Merrick. Adrian, I want to stick with the marketing theme just a bit, if you don't mind. My friends in the marketing department talk about early triers and heavy users. It strikes me that a lot of the work you're doing is really quite cutting edge. I'm sure there are firms that do comparable things. It strikes me that you're on the forefront with your firm. Who is it are there general characteristics of your clients that you're willing to share with us that make them the early triers, or people who are consistently coming back to you with maybe new product, new candidate proposals? Who are the early triers? Who are the heavy users?
Sure. The early triers tend to be folks that are, how would I say this? They're in the innovation business themselves, right? These tend to be like earlier stage companies or smaller nonprofits that are trying to grow really fast. And so they're trying to find tactics that are going to let them catch up to the pack in terms of their overall size or their political effectiveness. The heavy users tend to be exactly who you would think, right? They're established firms, established labor unions, folks who've been around for quite a while and who tend to care about more than one issue. The early triers, they tend to be focused on a single issue or a really narrow band of issues, either political issues or issues they're trying to solve as an institution. The heavy users, they tend to care about maybe not everything, but a whole lot of things. So that'd be like folks in the defense space, right? Like they have a band of issues that they care about in defense specifically, but they also care about things like tax and labor policy, regulatory policy, because they're huge multinational companies, right? The same thing goes for large labor unions, where they're an old established actor and they've got their fingers in a lot of different pies that they care about, and they want to be effective on more than one issue. Those tend to be the heavy users that come back over and over again. They also tend to have needs, not just in terms of influencing the issue and communications environment, but also the electoral process itself. And so, in addition to corporations and labor unions and trade associations, we do a lot of work with organizations that exist to do that sort of thing, the electoral work or influencing the electoral work. So, for instance, super PACs are a big part of our book of business. Those tend to be affiliated with large institutions, those same sort of large corporations and labor unions, but they obviously run somewhat independently. And so we do a lot of work with those folks that want to be able to support multiple candidates, maybe for partisan reasons, maybe for not cross-partisan reasons. And they care a lot about who are going to be the policymakers that are going to have an influence on what they do over years and decades into the future. And then we do a lot of work with nonprofits that engage in what I would call the political communication space around elections. So for those of your listeners who aren't familiar, Section 501C of the Internal Revenue Code, in addition to the charities that everyone thinks about that were created under that section of the code, created 501c4s, social welfare organizations. And so these organizations are allowed to engage in issue communications. They can accept unlimited dollars. There's no limit to how much you can give to a 501c4. There is, however, very limited disclosure, practically none, that's required about the money, where the money came from. Those organizations are required to tell the IRS, but the IRS is required to redact that information if it's ever FOIA'd. And so there are a lot of folks that like those organizations because they don't want folks to know where the money's coming from. It's the dark money that you hear maligned so much in our politics. We do a lot of work with those organizations. They can spend unlimited dollars. They can take money from non-traditional sources. They're just not allowed to use what we call the magic words, right? So they can engage in issue advocacy, but not express advocacy like a political action committee or a candidate would do. So they can't say, vote for Bill. They can say, call Bill and tell him he's a great guy. Thank him for standing up for America. So that's the sort of distinction between those two. We do a lot of that sort of stuff as well. And those tend to be extremely heavy users in fits and starts, right? That tends to track the every 2-year electoral cycle.
Yeah, I would think.
As opposed to some of the issue management and grassroots organizing work that we do that's evergreen and goes on all year round.
A more personal work week question. You spoke to how much you enjoy running the firm, how much you enjoy making success stories of the people that work with you and watching them develop, watching them grow, watching them be excited about what they do in a work week. Can you give us a sense of maybe a rough proportion of your work week? How much of it is meeting with clients? How much of it is looking at the internal where you're doing well as a firm and where you think there's potential for growth. Can you walk through a somewhat average? I appreciate your cycle. Thanks for the hand movement, but is there a somewhat average work week and your proportionate allocation of your time?
It's a great question, and there's really not, right? A lot of it depends on the time of year and what we're working on for various clients. What I can say is that the longer term planning for the firm mostly happens on the weekends. Typically on Sunday, late in the morning, myself and our COO will get together, we'll plot out what's happening the next week, and then we'll sit down with the firm's financials and some of that other strategic planning that is hard to get done during the work week when you're actually trying to do operations and let the business run. So a lot of that tends to happen on Sunday mornings, if I'm being honest, in terms of the long-term planning. As CEO at the firm, I do a lot of client relations, right? Certainly a lot of other folks at the firm do that too, but especially with our higher paying clients, like in any other business, right? Your highest paying clients expect to see the boss now and then. It's part of what they're paying for. So I make sure that I'm involved in a lot of the client relations stuff so that they know I'm paying attention to what's going on. Even if they know I'm not doing the work myself, they know that I am at least paying attention to what's going on with the issues that they're concerned about. For other folks at the firm, it looks quite different. Our data scientist that does a lot of the AI work for us and is building us a custom political CRM system, her day looks a lot different, where she gets to work either at her desk at home or here at Grassroots Midwest. She puts her earbuds in, and if you knock loud enough on the door, she'll stick her head up or whatever, but she just buries her nose in the computer and gets it done. And then there are folks like our outreach director, Seth, who, as his title implies, he spends a lot of time on the telephone with people and a lot of time doing that real shoe leather grassroots organizing. I think that's one of the things that people appreciate about working at this business is that it is so different every day, right? It's very hard for something to feel stale because when we have an emergency for a client or we have a big event for a client, everyone is expected to step outside of their role to help provide gold star service to the client. So going back to the example of the Capitol rally that we helped stage this week and the march, that's an all hands on deck event. We've got 750 people to manage. So everybody take your earbuds out if that's your preferred work style, and we're all going to meet here and help these 750 folks feel good about their experience, feel powerful, and feel like their voices were heard. And then the next day, you'll go right back to what your normal work style is. I personally appreciate that, and I get my fill of it because I'm the entrepreneur. But I think a lot of other folks at the firm appreciate that it's hard for things to feel stale here.
Very interesting. Merrick, back to you.
I'd like for you to talk a little bit about what you think some of your, particularly since you've been in Grassroots Midwest, what would you say some of your major successes have been? And if you've had any disappointments, or what would they be? Not that they're due to your business per se, but just things that for whatever reason didn't align in terms of what you might have been trying to do for a client, but the environment was so inhospitable, whatever the case might be. Give us a flavor for that as much as you like.
Yeah, honestly, there are a bunch of ways I could answer with that. I'll start with the people, right? My greatest successes and my greatest failures as a CEO and an entrepreneur have all been related to people. I have made some fantastic hires at this firm, both folks who are still here and folks who've gone on to some amazing jobs later in some really important jobs in government and in the corporate world. And that's great. Like this, honestly, it always sucks to lose people, right? Because I hate having to go back out and hire, but there is something really satisfying about helping somebody develop their career, right? Like where you're both helping each other succeed. They're helping my business can succeed and I'm helping them succeed in their career. That's exceptionally satisfying. Probably my greatest success in that regard is our COO. Our COO, Sabrina, started at Grassroots Midwest as a 19-year-old intern in college, and she's 27 now and is chief operating officer of the company because she was so talented and immersed herself so much in the work and the corporate culture here and helping us frankly improve the corporate culture that she went from a 19-year-old intern to a 27-year-old chief operating officer all at our firm. That's incredibly satisfying to see people develop like that. My greatest failures as a CEO have also all been related to people. Just like I've made some really great hires here, I've made some terrible hires here. I'll also say that I started the business in 2013. And like a lot of entrepreneurs, I tried to grow way too fast in terms of my staff. And it could very well have killed the business. So in terms of greatest mistakes that I've made at Grassroots Midwest, the worst sort of failures here, it's been in that regard where I tried to grow the firm too fast in terms of our employee footprint. And I made some suboptimal hires. Turning back to my COO, that's part of the reason we've gotten better at that, is that she seems to have a even better eye for talent than I do. In terms of the actual operations of the firm, though, I will say one of my favorite things to have worked on here, and one of the things that I'm super proud of in terms of successes, actually goes back to the issue that we were just talking about, right? That tip credit issue. I have been working on that issue since 2018 at our firm, when the legislature adopted and amended the ballot initiative to preserve the tip credit in 2018. My firm was involved then, and we've come back to that issue now 6 years later to help them do it again. So that was a great success for our firm. And one of the things that I really enjoy about the firm and the grassroots stuff is helping normal people feel powerful. I think a lot of people in our society feel powerless in the face of our politics, both just the toxic division, but government just seems so big and unwieldy and impossible to move or get anything meaningful from. And when those folks left on Wednesday, they felt good about themselves. They felt like their voices had been heard, and they had hope that their elected officials, their representatives, were going to do something for them that was going to have a meaningful impact on their lives. And I got to tell you, that feels great. Not for me, but to look at those folks and see them obviously very fearful about interacting with lawmakers and the media, and that they were going to lose on their issue and it was going to impact their livelihood when they got to Lansing Wednesday morning, and them leaving Wednesday afternoon feeling powerful. That feels great.
I want to ask you to drill down a little bit more about your bipartisanship, because you are in a space that is highly partisan and highly polarized today. How do you turn that into an advantage when you go out there? Are there people out there who they won't talk to anybody unless they're on one side or the other? Can you get them to talk to you if you're in this space in between? One of the things you emphasize a lot and noting in your website is, I looked at some of the images you have under data analysis. It's pretty impressive about what you do in geospacing and network analysis and that kind of thing. You basically just say, look, you can find anybody who's going to tell you what you want to hear, but I'll tell you what you need to know. Tell me a little bit about how you overcome it, maybe a hesitation that some might have. At least it seems to me they might in this space, because it just seems that I can't find anybody who's in the middle anymore.
It's a real challenge. It's a great question, right? And there are still some folks that are resistant to dealing with a bipartisan firm. That's absolutely true. I would say by and large, those are the most dyed-in-the-wool partisans and the most dyed-in-the-wool partisan organizations. And that's fine. One of the things that we do to help cut through some of that is we have one issue that we won't touch that makes a huge difference in being able to bridge the partisan divide. It's abortion. We won't work on that issue on either side, because I'm not changing anybody's mind about that issue. And people have very strongly held feelings on either side of that issue. And so we made a decision when I started the firm. That was the one issue that was absolutely off the table on either side, which is one place that a lot of efforts at bipartisanship in our country get tripped up. People change their minds on that issue, but I'm not going to be the person who changes their minds. What I would say is there was definitely more resistance when we started to this concept than there is now. I think partly you have to go out and show people, number one, that you're an honest broker, right? We work with labor, we work with business, obviously never when they're in conflict with each other on a specific issue. But number one, you have to demonstrate that you can be trusted, right? There's a lot of cloak and dagger in politics. There's a lot of hide the ball. And if somebody's going to pay you to help them win on an issue, they need to know that they can trust you to help them win, not to share information with the other side on that particular issue. So you've got to develop a track record of trust. And that's hard to do. It definitely took us some time to be able to get the clients that would allow us to do that, to go out and show people. One of the things that we did, and our firm doesn't work directly with candidates anymore. But when I started the firm in 2013, I was the CEO right out of the chute. One of the things that I did to make a demonstration of that is I had just left as chief of staff of the House Democrats. And so we took on some Republican candidates that first cycle. And 3 of the 4 House seats that flipped against the Democrats in the Michigan House in 2014 were our clients. And that, for me, on a personal level, that demonstrated to a lot of Republicans, not just in Michigan, but in the upper Midwest, that like, when I say I'm going to help you win, it doesn't matter that I'm a Democrat. Like, I told you I was going to help you win. You gave me money to do that. And so I'm going to go out and I'm going to do the job. Right. And so that was, did we make a lot of money on those campaigns? No, we did not. But it was an opportunity for me to demonstrate to folks that might hire me that, yeah, I'm a Democrat, but like, when you hire me, you can trust me to help you win. And you can trust everybody else here, Democrat or Republican, that they're going to help you win on your issue. That helps a lot. I think the other thing is diverse hiring practices, right? Not just in terms of what people look like, but actual ideological diversity. I disagree with a lot of people at the firm about some issues that are pretty important to me or are pretty important to them. And that's okay. And fostering an environment, a corporate culture for ourselves where that's okay, and where we don't actually have to argue about it all the time either. I can think one thing and you can think another thing, and we can have a discussion about it. And then we can have a discussion about something else, or we can go grab some lunch, or we can start working on a client that doesn't have anything to do with that issue, and we can just leave that behind. And I still like you and your wife, and I still think your kid's cute, and we just happen to disagree about this issue that we both think is really important. So fostering that as part of the corporate culture, that it's okay to be different, right? It's okay to think differently. That's fine. I think that's gone a long way too, where, we can have very open conversations internally, and not everybody has to agree about every issue. I will say the other thing is we incorporate some of this into our hiring as well. This sort of bipartisan model is not for everybody, right? And I think it's important in the hiring process to be upfront with people, even when we bring interns into the firm. We always ask people first and foremost, are you comfortable working on issues where you might disagree? So that's the first bar that you have to clear. But we also ask people specifically, are there any issues that you're just uncomfortable working on? A lot of people say the abortion issue, which is fine because we don't do that anyway. But we've had folks in the past that have identified issues that just make them super uncomfortable and they wouldn't be okay working on. That may or may not be a fit, but it's important for everybody to get that out on the table up front, right? Like, what are our boundaries here in terms of what we're willing and capable of working on? Because if we're going to go out and sell a job to a client, they need to know that everybody on the team is rowing in the same direction to help them win. So I think that setting clear expectations about what we do here, and again, I keep using that joke or whatever, but because we are a bipartisan firm, we do politics for money, not for partisanship. Everyone's allowed to think what they want here, but ultimately the goal is to win for the client so that they'll come back and pay us again.
That's a very interesting answer, and it's very helpful to us at Masters and Volz, the business of politics, because we're bipartisan. Bill and I come from opposite sides, but we agree on a lot of things. And one of the things I think about politics that we're trying to convince people of or appreciate is that both sides, even though they may be polarized on issues, they use the same technologies, they need the same knowledge, skills, and information, analytical capabilities in order to accomplish their goals. And so there's a lot of commonality there. Bill, I'm going to turn things over to you to wrap things up.
It's been very interesting. I think I'd feel remiss if someone that is in the strategic consulting space was not asked about the 2024 elections and how they see the political parties' position. Maybe it's federal, maybe we've got a Senate race, we've got an important, I think, House race here within the state. Any sense of just the overall political environment and how the two large political parties have positioned themselves in what appears to be, I'm not sure. Let's hear from you what you think the next, 60 days or so are going to show us.
Yeah, it's America's in a really weird spot in terms of its politics. And Michigan, being a purple state and one of the swing states in the presidential election, is right at the eye of the storm there. There is a realignment going on in American politics that explains a lot of what we're seeing in politics right now. Democrats and Republicans, basically since 2015, are engaged in a voter swap. Republicans are claiming a lot of non-college educated white male voters that have traditionally voted for Democrats, union members and non-union members alike, that have traditionally voted for Democrats or where Democrats have at least been competitive. And Democrats at the same time have been conquering the suburbs at an astonishing rate. College educated, affluent suburbanites are fleeing the Republican brand in droves at the same time that they're picking up this working class base that has traditionally been owned by Democrats. That realignment has absolutely nothing to do with economics. It's all about culture. There is a perception by these folks that are drifting towards the Republican Party, and some of this applies to males and some minority groups too, like African Americans and Hispanics. There is a perception that people like us, overeducated elites, look down on the way that they live. And they're actually not wrong. And the realignment started before 2015, but former President Donald Trump, who, despite what some Democrats will tell you, is actually an extremely cunning individual, has been able to capitalize on and accelerate that because he's been able to tap into that sort of cultural anger. And it's a very interesting thing. These elections are going to be extraordinarily close this year. I think you have to say that Democrats are a slight favorite for the presidency, slight favorite for Michigan's U.S. Senate seat, pretty heavy favorites to lose the U.S. Senate overall, and at about a coin flip to reclaim the U.S. Congress. These two ships passing in the night, right? Where this voter swap is happening, but it's not completed. A lot like the realignment that went on in the 70s and 80s around desegregation and busing, right? That took actually like a couple decades to play out. And it's a terrible trade for Democrats. I'd say that I'm a Democrat, right? And as everyone on the show knows, only about a third of Americans have college degrees. So in terms of numbers, it's a terrible trade for absolute numbers. However, the flip side of that is overeducated elites, such as ourselves, we always vote. Right? So you're swapping numbers for intensity. And that's part of what built the George H.W. Bush, Ronald Reagan version of the Republican Party was affluent suburban elites who vote consistently and have money to give to your campaign, have powered them. And now those people are powering Democrats. Yeah. And Democrats have always relied on turnout of inconsistent voters. And now the Republicans are doing that. It's the old Chinese curse come to life. May you live in interesting times.
Said. Merrick, back to you.
I was just going to say thank you very much, Adrian, for coming. Is there anything else you would like to tell us about yourself or your firm as we close things up in this interview?
You know what? I really appreciate you fellas having me on here. And rather than talk more about our firm, I'm just going to put a plug in for a very old book that I think that Americans who are concerned about the direction of their country should read. It's Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone. A lot of the breakdown that we see in our social institutions is because people don't actually have relationships with one another at nearly the sort of scale that we need. And politics is one of the few ways that they do, and it's poisonous. And also, a lot of human relationships that would promote social cohesion are being replaced with online parasocial relationships. And it's not good enough to keep a society together. So I strongly encourage people who are interested, pick up a copy of Robert Putnam's Bowling Alone. It should be cheap. It's been in print for decades. It's a really great diagnosis of where we are as a country and what we might do to fix it.
I think that's a wonderful insight, and it's so true. And Bill, would you like to say anything in conclusion?
Nothing more. Just Adrian, it's been terrific. Thank you very much. I'm going to not tell you of all the clients I'd love to send your way. I'm not going to talk about it.
I love it. Thanks for having me
Yeah.
on, Merrick, Bill. This has been
Well,
great.
it's been a pleasure having you, and we'd like to thank our audience for watching and hope that you will click that subscribe and like button. We'll see you in our next episode, so take care, folks. Thank you.